It's nice to see so many of us on this call this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Rita Moma. I'm the section chair for the Health Administration section for Mississippi Public Health Association. So we're glad to have you join us in this, our last webinar for the year 2025. It's been an interesting year for us all in public health, and I know that we're looking forward to a lot more exciting things come 2026. So, as we move further in the program, I want to introduce a few people that are pivotal to what we're doing today. A lot of people are working in the background and engaged in one level of the activity or the other. So I would like to introduce a few of them. But I want to start with our MPHA Executive Director, and that's Lydia West. She's been very instrumental in getting this program going.
Hi, everybody. Happy Monday. Thank you all for joining us. I'm very excited about all the work that the Health Administration section is doing. Thank you for organizing this, and I'm looking forward to the presentation today. In the chat, I do want to do a couple plugs. I'm going to put information about the Health Administration section, put that link in the chat, as well as how to join if you're not a member of MPHA and then joining the Health Administration section. And then we also have another webinar happening on Wednesday of this week, and it's about using communication in your public health and just trying to make sure we're getting out good public health communication efforts. So I'm going to put that link in the chat as well. Thank y'all so much. I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Mama.
Thank you, Lydia. Thank you. So part of the executive team for the Health Administration section, we also have them here, and our chair-elect, and I'm excited, so excited about having a chair-elect, is none other than Dr. Jared Gant. Dr. Gant, can you say hi to the people in the audience?
Good morning. Moving into the afternoon. Hope everyone's doing well. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gant. So also with us today is our secretary, and that's Dr. Yolanda Barna. Dr. Barna, can you say hello to our participants today?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. We hope that you enjoy every moment of this webinar.
Wonderful, wonderful. Also with us today, we're expecting 2 more executive members to join. I think it's Latasha Michael. She's supposed to join us. She's our financial secretary. She holds all the millions that we're trying to make in this section. And then Elizabeth Jones will be joining us also. She's our evaluation coordinator. So today's topic is very personal to me. And I say that because a lot of times we don't understand the effect of change till we're right smack in the middle of change. We plan for change, we anticipate change, but when it comes, we still don't know what to do with the change. So adaptive leadership is something that I began to look into as at 6 years ago, and it's something that has opened my eyes to the potentials the human mind has, a lot of potential. You'd be amazed what you can do and how much you can adapt to change when it comes upon you. So I'm really excited to have our guest today to talk about it, but I'm going to talk a little bit about our guest before we get to the topic. I just want to wait to Africa. So Dr. Loretta Jones Williams, we met by accident in front of a staircase somewhere in downtown Jackson, and that's how all this began. So I'm looking forward to hearing a lot from what she has to share with us. So she has always been an educator at heart, and her passion for education has culminated in her current position as the Vice Dean for Medical Education in University of Mississippi School of Medicine. So she began her journey in education because her parents were both educators in the Mississippi Delta. So when you're born to a teacher, you're bound to teach somewhere along the line in your life. So she grew up in Indianola, Mississippi, where she attended public schools. You see that public schools are still good. I'm promoting public schools. There's still good stuff there. And she completed her undergraduate studies at Tougaloo College with a degree in chemistry and her graduate and professional degrees at Boston University School of Medicine in Boston, Massachusetts. So she got a doctorate in biochemistry and a medical degree as well. So from Boston, she moved to California to complete a residency in emergency medicine, and that was at Highland Hospital in the Alameda County Medical Center of Oakland, California. And she returned to Mississippi, her home state, in 1999. Now, at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, Dr. Loretta Jackson Williams has maintained her focus on education while actively engaged in daily clinical practice. So that's a strong combination, education and practice combined together. So when she joined the Department of Emergency Medicine in 1999, she served as the clerkship director for the emergency medicine elective. And then she became a member of the School of Medicine Curriculum Committee in 2000. In 2008, she joined the administrative team of the School of Medicine as the Assistant Dean for Academic Affairs. And in 2009, she was named the Associate Dean for Academic Affairs. So just 6 years ago, 10 years ago in 2015, yes, it was 10 years ago that she became responsible for a lot more. Her duties expanded and she was named the Vice Dean for Medical Education. So she's responsible for the daily operations of the School of Medicine, and she provides leadership and representation for the school as needed by the dean. So one thing about her is that she's committed to delivering an exceptional educational program to produce competent, capable, and compassionate physicians for the state of Mississippi, for the nation, and beyond. So I want to hand you over to Dr. Loretta Jackson Williams to share with us what she has to say. Nice to have you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good
You're welcome.
afternoon, everybody. It's great to be with you. I'll share my screen because I did put together a slide presentation that I've actually shared with others in the past, some form of this, because I feel as though change management has been the story of my life. And part of that really comes through my chosen profession as an emergency medicine physician, because I feel that emergency medicine physicians are always doing adaptive leadership. When you really get into the definition of it and what it is. So the title is Leading Through Change, and with the caveat of what 2025 has taught us about adaptive leadership, because there has been quite a bit in there. So going through this, we're going to talk about change management, because in a nutshell, that is what this is really focused on, is change management. Evaluate the significant roles that all of us could have during change management, and then talk at the end about how change management can improve through adaptive leadership. And that's the final cap point for this. I don't have any financial disclosures. I don't receive any financial enhancements from this change management work that I feel we're always doing. I've been here at the University of Mississippi School of Medicine since 1999. And in that time frame, since 2021, we've had an educational grant that has supported some of the work that I will actually discuss a little bit, that's impacted by some of the things that happened in 2025. The grant is actually through HRSA, of the Department of Health and Human Services, and HRSA, even though we have programs developed through this presentation does not necessarily mean that HRSA endorses or approves the information. General questions. I'm always curious, and you can just put your hand up or do a reaction. How many of you came today because you wanted to explore a framework for the implementation of change that you're leading? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And how many came because you want to explore how to manage change that's been thrust upon you? The majority. Yeah. So I'm always fascinated with this question because I think that a lot of times when people look at change management presentations, they're looking for ways to actually manage what has been given to them, not necessarily because they are about to lead change. And while I really and truly will present from that point of view where I'm talking about you as the change agent and management of that change, if we flip it, really and truly, we can use it to actually manage the change that's thrust upon us. Because the thing that we have to remember is that it really is about how we manage our thoughts and reactions to the issues in front of us. So I just want us to keep that in mind as we talk through this. I saw this quote, and this is one of those issues that I think about a lot as I'm trying to manage change and as I'm trying to help people manage the change that's thrust upon them. And everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself. And I thought about this a lot when Highway 49 between here and Florence, Mississippi was undergoing construction. My older sister, who is a retired teacher, lived in Indianapolis for years, moved to that area about 10 years ago. And then they decided to do construction out there. And all of a sudden, I hated driving that way because the construction was awful. I mean, you all know what it's like to drive through a construction area. Um, Now, the 2 lanes that were there prior to the construction and the current 3 lanes was adequate, but that was a pretty busy area because there are a lot of folks who come through that area. But during the time of the change, when the active construction was ongoing, it was awful. Now that we're on the other side of it, it's fantastic because the product that we wanted, the 3 lanes, actually improved the flow of traffic. The part that we didn't want was to actually go through the change. We didn't want to go through the construction. And sometimes that is the difficulty. So it is that whole process, um, the the change that we have to do for ourselves as we manage getting through construction. So we have to give ourselves a little bit more time to get somewhere, or the location where we're going is not as convenient as prior. So we have to be deliberate and thoughtful about what we're going to do. So these are the things that we have to manage with change. And change management is really a process focused on management of, of what we are changing within an organization while preparing everyone involved, minimizing resistance, and at the same time, maximizing engagement to achieve a specific outcome. Those are the really difficult parts. And if we really tease all of this into its specific pieces, the specific outcome needs to be clear. Because if no one understands what they're trying to get to, it's really hard to convince them that there is a need to change. So you're not going to get them engaged, and you're not going to minimize resistance, and you're not going to prepare them to be involved unless they really understand the specific outcome that you're trying to achieve. So, in change management, that is a part of the process. So, as someone who has had change thrust upon us, part of it is getting to the point where we understand what the specific outcome is. And if that cannot be adequately explained and explored, that is where we have difficulty. So, this structured process, what does it look like? Any kind of way you look at change management, you need to plan. It should not be a haphazard process. It should be a planned process. You have to identify the people who will be involved in the change and affected by the change. And you have to go through the process of identifying what the challenges or problems, difficulties, all of those will be. And then you have to implement and go back and reassess. In medicine, we talk about this continual cycle, this PDSA cycle, where you are planning, identifying what the issues are, implementing, and then reassessing. This is what you have to do. Now, in the midst of all of that, in addition to the structured part, I want you to note that you also need to communicate broadly throughout, because that's the other piece that is missed sometimes. While you can have the best intentions, if people don't know the steps and are not with you as you're going through, then that makes it difficult to follow. So all along the way, you have to communicate, 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 communicate. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this because we have had uh, over the years that I've been here, a number of things that we have been involved in, but there's one specific project where this is really key. And I'll provide that example. So in addition to this structured process, I also like to think about the art of change. And in a way, this is about the heart of change, right? Because you have to take care of people's feelings and emotions in this process. So when there is a discussion about adaptive change, there are those who talk about the technical aspects, and then there are the beliefs and the systems within that you have to think about. A great example that's used in this was about someone who is reaching an older age and not driving so well. And I think about that because this happened with my father as he got into his 80s, and he had some dementia and had difficulty finding his way at times. So the question becomes, how do you approach that? Particularly, I'm the child. I'm not the caregiver, the physician who's taking care of him. I'm the child that he's known all of my life, right? So that is a difficult change position to be in because I have to manage all of that. Um, and that is difficult because that has emotions, hierarchy, feelings, and you have to manage those pieces of change. And even in the workplace that occurs, right? Because there are people who feel very passionately about the work that they do, how they do it, where they go to do it. And as leaders within that space, managing things that have to move in a different direction, we have to attend to those beliefs and feelings and thoughts. That art of change. And then to me, this is one of the big pieces to think about. You have to know yourself in this process. So I have thought a lot over the years about my developmental forces. And there are a couple of things that are important when I think about my work and how I approach my work and people, is that I came here as a package deal. I have never known what it was like not to think about somebody else and how they approach things. So this is my twin. The one stepping forward here is me. She's actually 8 minutes older than me. And both of us are very, as my husband said, opinionated women. So um, I have had to negotiate all my life because we are very opinionated women. So I've always had to manage somebody else's opinions and thoughts. My parents were actually older. When these twins came along, they were in their 40s. We just gave them a run for their money. Um, and they had two other children. So my brother and my older sister are 15 and 13 years older. So by the time we came along, they were tired. So that was important. But they were also educators. So the way they approached things was very structured. I mentioned that I had older siblings, so we got a chance to see how they navigated the world. And one of the things that our older siblings and my parents always believed is that an idle mind was the devil's workshop. So we were always busy, right? Always busy. And growing up within that environment, I was never afraid to leave home, never reluctant, always ready to go and explore new things. So I had an open mind. I was always listening to others and thinking about their thoughts, um, and taking into account that people really were different. My parents grew up in became their formative years were during the Great Depression. So that is a very different mindset. And my older siblings, really and truly of the boomer generation. And then along comes the twins. So always thinking about these different viewpoints of people in my life. So that to me is this whole picture of understanding yourself within your environment, right? Because you got to understand what all of this is that you bring forward because the people working with you only see this little tip, but you know that the rest of this is there informing how you approach things, right? And in this environment with multiple different views, a number of people passionate about the work that they do, the work is critical for the health and safety of the population. These are the things that you have to consider. And the only thing that we really control is ourselves and our reactions, and how we approach things. So, my project, for a number of years, we have talked about a redesign of the School of Medicine curriculum. The curriculum for medical education has been the same since about 1910, after the Flexner report identified that medical education needed to be grounded in scientific information, and that there needed to be an apprenticeship type of clinical exposure for students. So that 4-year outline of medical education with 2 years of a preclinical program and 2 years of a clinical program has been the same since about 1910. Of course, over the years within that educational program, there have been changes in how it is delivered and what all is delivered based upon the monumental amount of information that has become available. There have been studies done talking about the change in facts and how fast they change, and the fact that we have moved from every 100 years or so to 73 years, the 73 days of information. So there's a lot of information. So one of the things that has been educational movement has been the integration of the preclinical curriculum so that students are not studying disciplines, scientific disciplines in isolation, but are studying those disciplines within the context of organ systems or systems-based systems like renal system, musculoskeletal system, or organs. So in 2004, we started thinking about how we would realign our curriculum with the goal that we would integrate our curriculum. This is back in 2020, 2004, so over 20 years ago. It was in 2014, so 10 years from the time when we first started looking at this, that we actually developed our first integrated course. It was in 2016 that we actually put in place academic support for students, specifically for the School of Medicine. And in the midst of all of this, we decided to grow the class size. So began growing the class size from the 100 in 2004 to 165 in 2018. And then we had COVID. And that was another whole different story because, and this to me is the story of COVID, is that we all pretend that we got through everything, and through that educational program the same way, but that educational program was different than the educational program that we have now. And that's just an acknowledgement of really and truly all of the factors that were impacting the educational program at that point. To the point that we got to 2021 and introduced a completely integrated curriculum for our educational program. And this was a lot because in the midst of all of this time, from 2004 to 2021, we had to socialize the change. We had to develop not just the reason why, but we had to prove the concept was possible with the introduction of an integrated course, right? And in the midst of all of that, we had to prove that it was necessary, that it was possible, and that the students would still perform well on all of the external exams that our students have to take in order to complete the educational program and successfully obtain a license to practice medicine. That's a lot. So it had to be an intentional, planned, structured process. We focused on the why, and this is the important piece of that where I talked about the specific reason for the change. So we focused on the why of the change. I mentioned the exponential increase in medical knowledge, the acknowledgement of really and truly how people learn. So taking into account the neuroscience of learning, that our students needed the clinical relevance to improve retention of that knowledge. They needed to be able to apply it, use the problem solving skills early on in the curriculum that they use as they are taking care of patients, and it needed to be an efficient process. In addition to which, as I mentioned earlier, it aligned with the direction of medical education throughout the country and where we were going. So that focus on why was important. And that was important not just for the students, but also for the faculty engaged in this process. It gave them learning talking points. Then we had to also focus on how we were going to do this and what this change meant and how it would look different from a traditional curriculum. So we retained some portions of the delivery with the traditional lectures, but we substituted a number of those for flipped classroom sessions, increased small groups. We had intentional problem-based learning sessions with patient-oriented problem-solving sessions called POPs. And we introduced a number of workshops and simulations, in addition to which we had required, observed, structured clinical examinations or OSCEs for our students in the preclinical years. So these were all of the additions of how we would modify the delivery of the curriculum. And finally, we spent time really identifying and acknowledging those challenges or the anticipated problems. So the requirement in all of this is that we needed more faculty engagement. And of course, that is always a problem because our faculty are busy clinicians and researchers. So getting them to specifically say, I am also going to do this intentionally was important. So a recruitment of our course directors and our teaching faculty. We had to do some intentional faculty development around this. So in the process of preparing for this change, there was a recognition that there was some things that we had to do differently. And that is also a part of that assessment that you have to go through with change management. We did a lot of different faculty development and work around test design, development, and review. And we moved a lot of our processes to central and not peripheral oversight of the process. So this became a major undertaking, which is why it took 20 years. So when I reflect on the process, you have to have realistic plans. You have to be willing to have these open and honest discussions and recognize the beliefs and feelings of everyone involved in the process and help manage through that. And you have to acknowledge that change is not a straight linear process. We started this, like I said, years ago, and I used to tell the then dean of the School of Medicine and the vice chancellor, Dr. Keaton, that for us, curriculum change is evolutionary and not revolutionary, because revolutionary change in a curriculum like this would never work. But evolutionary change does. And that's because it's slow enough that you prepare everybody who is impacted or engaged in the process for it, and you have safety measures to ensure you don't negatively impact the learning opportunities for the students. And all of that is key. So after 27 years of work, one of the things that I really believe is that everybody wants change, but nobody really wants to go through it. It's the going through part that we have difficulty. And based upon that, I really think that that's where specifically the tenets of adaptive leadership come into play. So when I think about the things that we've had to manage in 2025, the biggest impacts have been legislative changes that have occurred that have forced us to take a different look at our curriculum and our content. We are accredited by the Liaison Committee on Medical Education as an MD program in the United States. And the accreditation body has had changes in the standards based upon some legislative changes and actually executive changes. And we've had to respond to that. And then the other thing that has been impactful has been grants. Like I mentioned, we have an educational grant. So we had to think about that. And with our grant comes into play resource management. So how do you now manage your resources differently if your resources are impacted? So all of these things have been important for us to manage in 2025. And I suspect you all have had some of that also that you've had to manage. So when I think about adaptive leadership, This is the practice of mobilizing people to tackle really tough challenges and at the same time thrive, right? And have people feel that their work is not thrown away in this environment. That is really important. So a huge part of this is acknowledging all of those feelings. So I go back to what I said earlier about the planning, identifying everyone involved and infected and affected, identifying what those challenges are, implementing that and reassessing, but then also going back, the adaptive part of this, and in an iterative way, changing as how you as a leader are moving individuals through this, taking in mind not only the technical parts, but the art part of the change, understanding their feelings and thoughts on this through an iterative process. So, again, I tell you, if you came because you wanted to know how to put forward the process of change, this was geared more towards that. But this is also geared towards those who have change thrust upon us, understanding that the bigger piece of this is about ourselves individually, and how we think through this and how we manage our thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. So now I will open it up, stop sharing, and open up for questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson Williams, for that enlightening discussion. It's actually made me put a lot of thoughts into my own program and see how far we've gone and the work we're doing. One of the things you pointed out that, have actually struck me is the fact that you have those things. I kind of wrote it down as a P, 4 I's, and an R. That's the way I could catch it. A P, 4 I's, and an R. But in between each one is communicate. Now, I have a question. I have a question to start up before other people join to ask the questions. And please, like I said earlier in the chat, post your questions in the chat, and we have someone who will look through and raise those questions. But my question is, so I see the value of communication. It just shows how powerful communication is at every stage, whether you're looking at your plan or the people involved, affected, or the things you intend to do. How can you ensure that your communication is reaching everybody involved?
So this is what we do. We use many different forms of communication, and we try to communicate with different groups in their preferred format. So for students coming in, so just think about our students when we made the major change for our curriculum. There was a first-year class that had that curriculum. So before they even got here, we were talking about what the difference was going to be, why we had it. Now, did that stop all of the questions? Absolutely not. But they all knew about it beforehand. The faculty were here, so we were constantly talking with them about it. But our educational program has more than just us. It impacts how our Office of Enrollment Management has our curriculum listed within the catalog. It impacts financial aid. It impacts so much. So we were over communicating with everybody. In addition to which, because we are accredited by the LCME, we had to actually put together a curriculum change, a modification document that had to go to our accrediting body before. So there are a lot of people that we had to communicate with. And the only thing that I can say is that it was always intentional and it was always with the thought of who it was we were trying to reach and what the purpose of it was. Was it for information? Was it for approval? All of that determined how we would communicate, but multiple different forms, in person, email, webinars. Um, for our students, we did a lot of webinars over the summer before they got here to talk about this. So it just really all depended on the target audience.
Thank you. So
I
it
have
looks like we should over communicate rather than just assume.
I really just don't think that you can over communicate, because if somebody doesn't want to hear it, they don't have to listen to it. But
Yeah.
you have to over communicate to reach the
Everybody.
1% that didn't get it right. And even with that, there's going to be somebody who tells you that they didn't know.
Yeah.
That's
Over
the
to you,
thing that
Dr.
I
Bonner.
found.
Okay, yeah. Over to you, Dr. Bonner.
I'm sorry. I don't have a question, but Ms. West put something in the chat, and so I just want to read that, and then she has a question. So I love the concept you ended with of the practice of mobilizing people to tackle tough challenges and thrive. A lot of the things you talked about involve working with a group. I feel like a lot of public health professionals are leaders in their field and also self-starters. And also we end up just taking on a project and doing it on our own. Do you have any tips for collaborative work versus just doing a project or program on your own?
Right. So even with the projects that are on your own, they impact others, right? So technically, you've got to engage others to really um, engage in the process or um, you know, not be distractors of the process. Does that make sense? So you've still, even in the midst of this, you've got to have buy-in. Um, and so while it may not be that you have buy-in on the development, you have to have buy-in on the implementation or reassessment, whatever piece of it that requires others. And just getting people excited about that is the part that becomes important. So you have to decide of that project where other people are involved, how can you get them maximally engaged? And how do you get them to feel ownership of something um, where they did not develop it, right? Because that's the other part of this. It's important. So, how do you get them to feel ownership of it if they were not directly involved? Ooh,
Thank you
can
for that.
yes, I like this question. One
Okay.
thing I see is the need to thrive. Can you share one practical way that we can thrive and build resilience during change management? I think that this is probably the more difficult piece, and I'll give an example of this, um, and tell you why I'm going to answer it the way I am. My daughter is, I am a glass half full person. My daughter is a glass half empty person. And it doesn't matter how much we can talk about things. She's always going to be a glass half empty, and I'm always going to be a glass half full. And I recognize that. But the way we get past our different views of things is to talk about really and truly what's within our own personal circle of control. So I spend time talking about what is important to you. Why is that important to you? And of this, what can you control? And really and truly is all about ourselves and how we look at it. So when I think about that question about thriving in change management, we have to get people to see what's important to them, why they even in this area and what they're doing. What's important, and then what is it do they actually control? What don't they control? And acknowledge that and move forward from that. Because if we spend time circling around the things that we don't control, then it is wasted energy, mental energy, and it feels as though you don't get anywhere. And then to put that focus on the things that we can control, and then that is where we get the piece about thriving. And we remove what feels what we feel has us stuck in quicksand, and that's what builds resilience. So we have to help people get past all of those things and to find the pieces that they really do control. That to me is the hardest piece. And I think about my daughter a lot in this because even to this day where she's out and working on her own, I feel as though she's still calling me to help her get past her stuck points. Yes, and that is also their why.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson Williams. It's really been interesting having you to share with us and hear a bit about your life. You were 8 minutes behind in coming out. What were you waiting for in there? What was it you were?
That is a good question. My sister was breech, and I tell her all of the time that I was pushing her, saying, hurry up, get out.
So that you can come on out and breathe this oxygen out here.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you so much for this interesting conversation. So, one of the questions that have actually crossed my mind as I was, talking about this is, so, in sustaining this change, because sometimes you have a change, and before you know it, another change comes upon the change that you have just started, and then another change. So, in sustaining the change that you are working on and ensure that it outlives or maybe it goes beyond the challenges for us, in an environment like this that is very constraining with the political and the administrative things, I mean, how can we work? I like the idea of collaboration. I like the idea of knowing your why. But are there ways, you've seen from your own teams, one or two things you did that helped engage more people beyond yourself in sustaining that change? So you start up something and maybe you decide you want to move to another place. How can you make sure that you transfer that to other people so they can sustain that change you've started?
Mm. So I think one of the things that we've also done that I didn't really provide as much depth on is communicating the outcomes of the change, right? Because that's where we are at this point. So it's not just, okay, we did this, we implemented this was important, but we're also at the point now we're talking about what the outcome measures are. And this is why we had to do this part, and this is the next step. Because the other piece that I recognize is that the only constant is change.
Yeah.
It really is. So we are preparing everybody for that, but we spend a lot of time going back and telling all of those involved parties about what the outcomes are. Yeah.
So we have one last question. It says, when implementing change, how do you get people to believe in themselves and the people, places, and things you're trying to impact?
Ooh, those are those relationships. To me, that's the art of the change. And one of the things that I have found is the value of presence in all of this is I try not to do a lot of this work as kind of an absentee person, but as a person who is present and involved and easily accessible. Um, and if somebody wants to come and talk with me about things, I have an open door and they pop in. Because part of this is that I understand is that it's difficult. And sometimes people don't want to ask or question in open forums. So I make myself available in person, via email, via phone call, whatever, in a way that is comfortable for them to question and engage. And I think that that is just meeting people where they are and helping them to navigate something that may not be as comfortable for them as it is for me.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for answering all of the questions. We really appreciate it, and we thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. And we will definitely, as public health leaders, take everything that we've learned today into account.
All right, it's my pleasure.
Thank you
So
so
wanted
much.
to wrap up and mention that we didn't apply for continuing education credits for today's presentation, but we will send out a certificate of attendance, so you can include that in your portfolio if your organization accepts that for your continuing education credits. And I'll email that out to everybody this afternoon. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's all good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Bye-bye.
that announcement. We have our evaluation in the link in the chat. Please kindly click on the evaluation link and complete it for us. It's not a lot of questions, just a few things there. We're hoping that we can get feedback from the evaluation and use that to grow the section and continue the work we're doing in Mississippi. It's a strong collaboration we have both from the public health field, from the medical field. So we're making a lot of changes so that we can have more people feel the impact of healthcare as a whole in Mississippi, not just I'm in medicine, I'm in public health, but the whole impact, because at the end of the day, that's the picture we want to create. So thank you so much for the time you've taken to come out and talk to us today. Thank you so much. We are very appreciative for your time. And to everybody else that joined, we're grateful, and we hope that we can see you at another webinar, and that your knowledge and skill base continues to increase, and you learn more and more and be, more of an excellent administrator in everything you do. Thank you so much, everybody. And we look forward to next year. Have a happy holiday and enjoy the Christmas, the New Year, the Hanukkah, there's another one on the 26th.
Kwanzaa.
Kwanzaa, thank you, Kwanzaa, exactly. Thank you so much for that. All right, and I have nothing else to add, and enjoy the rest of your week. Everybody, take care.